Today, we're looking at a pink ink by Herbin Rose Cyclamen. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you're only interested in certain parts, you can skip around. But if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here and like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Sailor My First pen with a medium fine nib. I wrote with it for a day and I used it to take the notes for this video. In order to standardize some of my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper for all of the inks. I do use other papers and some of those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both does show a little bit of color variation left to right, although it's not showing up in the writing. Tomoe River. With no bleeding, very minor, almost no Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show no color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. I agree with Vita that we learn a lot when we do multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this is truly a pink dye. It moves away from water, nice and light, gathering towards the top where it's getting much darker. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And since it looks exactly the same, except for the fact that I've marked that chromatography, or that filter paper with the letter D to let me know which one's dried, I'm not expecting any resistance for this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it performed amazingly well, given how easily this moved in the chromatography. It does make me feel like it could be safe to use in a note-taking situation because that H got lost in the smear over the highlighter. It does go from about an extra fine to a fine medium, but it did very well, especially when you look at what happens with water, which is completely reactivating and lifting it off the page in only 30 seconds. Pen flush does everything that water does and nothing more because you can't do more than remove all of it. 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the page, but you're not going to need it to remove it from your pen. I test for viscosity or flow using a thing called a tilt test. I will link how I do that, the video of it, down below or up in the cards. I also then put it onto a standard distribution so it's more easily seen with all of the inks that I've tested. Now, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Herbin Rose Cyclamen has a viscosity of 1.99, making it a wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Herbin's Rose Cyclamen has an average dry time of 8 seconds, making it a very fast-drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Herbin's Rose Cyclamen, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice green, and I chose Private Reserve's Spearmint. The second writing sample is done on Apica CD, Northbooks, and Word paper. Here we're looking at Apica CD notebooks. Now we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, very sparse moments of some shading. You look at brown, starts darker and gets lighter. You look at the word the, much darker than the word quick, so it is there, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than everything else here, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show no color variation, although we do get some with the extra fine. Northbooks. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both are showing no color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. And then we have Word notebooks. And we do get a bunch of bleeding that goes on. It's not touching the page underneath, but it leads to an incredible amount of ghosting, which makes the back of the page largely unusable, but it doesn't affect the next page, so it's got that. The 1.1 has feathering all over it, a ton of feathering. It has spread. It has no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub. It has a ton of feathering all over it. I don't think this ink goes well for this paper. It does have spread. It goes to about a medium. No halo, no sheen, no shade. 1 second to dry, so it's got that on its side. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub, with tons of feathering all over it. It does have spread. It becomes about a broad. No halo, no sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. Scrubby for both shows no color variation. We didn't get any in the writing, and that's all that I have for writing samples. So what do I think of Herbin's Rose Cyclamen? There's very little shading to be had in this ink. Now, it's a very boring pink, in that boring is beautiful and predictable. I really enjoyed using this and find this to be a very nice pink on the page. What nib and pen are going to give your best writing experience with this ink? Basically, you always get that same tone, which means this is dealer's choice. It's going to be the same nice pink all the time. If you've enjoyed this video, remember, I like thumbs up, you like thumbs up, everybody likes thumbs up. Unless you didn't like it, then give me the thumbs down. Both are good. Thanks for watching.